Hi guys, it's Mark Zicree, Mr. Sci-Fi, also known as Mark Zicree of Space Command. I hope you're all doing well. And oh, by the way, this is the new Space Command exclusive Kickstarter t-shirt. Really spectacular. You can go on our Kickstarter campaign right below and go directly to our Kickstarter campaign. We're at 32,000. We've only got 6 days to go. We have to hit 48,000 and we don't get any of it. So please, if you've been intending to pledge, you can get acting roles, you can get producer credits, you can get Star Trek collectibles that no one else has, incredible stuff. And so I highly recommend you go there immediately, because some of these things, there's only one of them. And if you don't get that, someone else will, and then they'll be able to be the super fan that you never got to be. So just a word of the wise. But what we're going to talk about today is something really super cool. I was going through the files to find a copy of a script that Elaine wrote that we're going to be shooting, and I found a file that I probably haven't looked at in 25 years. And what we're going to do is we're going to make this amazing thing. And I'm told not to do that. It's apparently a white supremacist symbol. I'm not a white supremacist. God, what a world we live in. Anyway, I digress. But so I'm known for many, many things in my career. Some of you know me as the writer of Star Trek and Babylon 5 and Deep Space Nine and Sliders and all these great genre shows, live-action genre shows of the 90s and so forth, and Space Command and Star Trek New Voyages, all of these things. Others of you know me as the writer of The Twilight Zone Companion and Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, maybe even the Magic Time novels. But when I broke in to television writing. See, my goal was to be a showrunner, a TV showrunner like Gene Roddenberry, like Rod Serling. And so with Space Command, that really is my dream come true. And the Kickstarter campaign, by the way, is to make more Space Command. We're about to release the first minute of the second hour of Redemption. So those of you who have watched the first hour can now see where the second hour goes a minute in. It's really cool. And we'll get that to you in the next day or two. We're working on it. But when I got out of college with my art degree, I knew I was going to be a writer, and there were two ways that I broke in to television. One was by writing The Twilight Zone Companion, which I started working on when I was 21 years old, and that's still in print, and I'm the world's expert on The Twilight Zone, which is a very cool thing to be. And but the other way was I took a writing course taught by Theodore Sturgeon, the great science fiction and Star Trek writer Theodore Sturgeon, and his teaching assistant was a young man named Michael Reeves. Now, I went to the Clarion Writing Workshop, the great science fiction writing workshop, in 1975, and Michael was a graduate from 1972, along with Octavia Butler, many other great writers, and Theodore Sturgeon was one of his teachers. So Michael was now the teaching assistant at this UCLA class that Ted Sturgeon was teaching, and Ted became a very good friend and mentor to me, and Michael Reeves became a very, very good friend. And at the time, Michael was not only selling short stories and novels, he was also writing animation for television. And Michael said, hey, you want to write a script with me? And he was writing for a show called Space Stars that was Space Ghost, and I said, sure. And very quickly, I became one of the gods of animation. I started writing for basically all the major shows, and it was phenomenal. And so first of all, this is an original cell from He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, which I wrote for. You can get a look at that. And so this is the file that I just came upon. Now, when I was writing for animation, the way it would work is we would often these shows hadn't even been made yet, Smurfs, He-Man, etc. And we would be maybe shown some materials about the show, or have a conversation about the show, or maybe see some illustrations of the characters, and then we would work up what were called premises, and these would be like 1 or 2 page storylines that would then be developed into outlines, then into scripts. Then we'd revise the scripts, and then they'd be made as shows. And so I ended up writing for tons and tons of shows. I worked for Hanna-Barbera and Deke and Marvel and Ruby Spears, all the major animation companies of that time, Filmation. And so what this is all of the premises, or many, many, many of the premises I wrote back then. And some of these were written on a typewriter, an IBM Selectric. Some of these were written on a K-Pro 2 computer, an early computer that was one of the first. And there's even handwritten notes in here. So I'm going to go through the material with you. And for $100, you can get a PDF of this entire file. None of this has ever been published. None, and some of these were shows that did get made, episodes. Many of them are episodes that did get made, but there's also alternate storylines, alternate versions, alternate ideas. So if you're a fan of He-Man or Super Friends or Smurfs or Real Ghostbusters, or I'll go through some of this material and tell you about it. And now for $250, you can get a signed copy of all this material. So we will mail it to you, and that's what you'll get. So this is the animation fans' dream package, and so we're going to post it on Kickstarter. We only have 6 days, and again, none of this has been made available to the public ever before. So let me just go through some of what's in here. First off, this is, and I wrote through the late 70s into the 80s, and then jumped over to live action with Star Trek and Sliders and Friday the 13th, the series, and I was off and running in that world. Now, Michael Reeves, some of these are things that I wrote with Michael Reeves. Now, Michael Reeves, of course, is very famous as a co-writer of Neil Gaiman's on the Interworld books, and he also won an Emmy for Batman the Animated Series, as well as being the producer on Gargoyles and a writer for Star Trek: The Next Generation. So again, a dear, and he also wrote World Enough in Time with Me, the George Takei's Star Trek episode that we did. So let's get into this stuff, but it's really phenomenal, and I haven't seen it since, I wrote it basically. So this is the Real Ghostbusters Writer's Bible. I don't know if this has ever been published anywhere. I wrote a number of episodes of the Real Ghostbusters, and before writing it, the movie had come out. It wasn't even available on home video yet, and so they gave us a VHS tape of Ghostbusters, the movie, and Chuck Menville and Len Jansen were story editing it with Joe Straczynski, and Joe and I were very good friends, and Joe basically said, what I want is you to write as if it were sequels to the movie, so don't write down to the kids at all, just write exactly what's going to entertain and delight you, which I did. But this is the writer's Bible that was given to us, the animation writers. It's about who the characters are. It's about what the show is. It includes Slimer, Janine Melnitz, the car, the series. I mean, it's a story, potential storylines. So there's this. There's also Michael and I were hired. There was a Michael Jackson ride at Disneyland called Captain EO, and they did a 3D video of Michael Jackson as this space-going character. It was kind of like Michael Jackson meets Star Wars. So for a time, they were going to do a TV show of it, and they asked us to develop it. So this is, and again, never published, Michael Jackson's Captain EO, and it was this is the series development, the storyline, and the setting of what that show was going to be. The pilot was going to be called The Altair Incident, and again, never published anywhere. Then we have the Bionic Six, which was a show I wrote for. These are premises that I wrote, dated 1986, so that's a while ago, and some of them were made into episodes, some not. Some you'll see that they were different from details of the episode as it evolved. But there's a variety of, and these have paper clips, the original paper clips, and so it goes into great detail about those episodes. Here is a page of two Ghostbusters premises, Real Ghostbusters, and you can see one is called No Fair for the Ghosts, and it's set in the 1939 New York World's Fair, and another's called Dream Spooks, and I don't think either of these got made. I wrote a number of episodes, but I don't think these two. So if you were wondering what was developed for Real Ghostbusters, unmade episodes, that's for you. And then this is Let the Games Begin. This is a show called The Centurions, and again, we didn't have ways of correcting things, so we used what was called whiteout. So this actually has the original whiteout. This is my TypeScript version. $100 you get a PDF of all this material. $250 you get a copy signed by me. So this is handwritten notes, my handwritten notes on Real Ghostbusters. Egon invents a device for some purpose. Ultimately, he asked it something like, what is the purpose of life? Or what's the meaning of life? Or what's behind all this? And suddenly Mark Zickery appears. He's much appalled at finding himself an animated character, and our heroes don't accept the account. He tells them that they're part of an animated spin-off of a popular movie. They want to haul him off to Bellevue. Lots of comic beats as Mark tries to call his agent, as he explains there are other writers. As he tells Pete, he puts them through hell for the money. Quote, I actually want to write movies, unquote. And when Pete is disappointed by how little the writers get paid for setting down his life, when Mark explains that the act break is coming, things are going to get real bad, real sudden for no discernible reason, unquote. And when they come back from the commercials, quote, see, did you notice nothing happened for 2 or 3 minutes, unquote? They don't. When they try to return him, no use flying to their West Hollywood, it's all in his office. When Egon opens the gate, in reality, sticks his head through and pokes it up out of a sheet of typing paper, sees the office, looks horrified. It was awful. Egon was supposed to ask it some other question. Anyway, it goes on and on. But I mean, what a wacky idea that would have been. What a fun episode that would have been. So here's more Centurions premises. Some made, some not. Here's something for Centurions I came up with called Survival Course. Now these are entire storylines. These are basically the jumping off points. Terror Town, there's one called Terror Town, here's another one called A Visit to the Zoo. Again, these are Centurions premises. They all have my name up top. They all have what show they're for. More Centurions premises, The Siege of Skyvault. And then there was a show called The Hug-a-Bunch, because all of us, there were only two kinds of cartoons at that point. There were sort of the superhero action ones, like He-Man, like Super Friends. Then there were sort of the funny animal ones, and that would be the Littles, that would be Biscuits, that would be Smurfs, you know, so, but they all had threats of violence as the underlying thing. Oh no, we're gonna, you know, the monster's coming. So this is Hug-a-Bunch, a hug for little sister. In Hug-a-Lands, Fancy and Bubbles look through a mirror into the living room of two sisters, blah, 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 you know, and then here's another Ghostbusters premise, Ghost on the Beat. And this is beginning, middle, and end. It's the entire episode. Handwritten, never published. Here's the Junior Ghostbusters. This was a premise that I came up with on March 10th, 1986. And it's several pages long. And again, wonderful stuff. You know, it talks about the story and, you know. Then there's one called the Ghost Zep, whatever that is. And, you know, it's just really interesting. So yeah, it's very cool. And then here's some like research note on swamps. So probably we were doing some cartoon set in a swamp. And there's all these notes. Here's possible family themes. This is something I typed up to give myself some jumping off points for stories. 1, feeling your best friend likes someone better than you. 2, just say no, peer pressure. 3, name calling. 4, respect for property. Blah, 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 blah. You know, so this is, you know, something that we're using. Master of the Bow. This is from, I'm not sure which show. This may be Dungeons and Dragons, I think. I think it is. But yeah, so I thought that that's, you know. Then there's one, yeah, here's Dungeons and Dragons. Hand of Darkness was one of the episodes. Open with Hank, Presto, Eric, Bobby, Sheila, Diana, and Uni facing a huge frost giant. And so this is for Dungeons and Dragons. Interestingly enough, the climax of that show, the ending episode of that show, I had an idea, and at that time I was working on something like Friday the 13th series, and Michael Reeves called and he said, can I use that idea of yours for that ending? And I said, sure. So there's actually an episode of Dungeons and Dragons that I'm not credited with, but I actually came up with the story. So, you know, we were all friends then, Mel Gilden and Buzz Dixon and Ted Peterson and Joe Straczynski and Chuck and Len and all these people. We were all very convivial. We were all represented by Candy Montero, the agent. We'd often have parties at each other's homes. We were all in our 20s and early 30s. It was a great time. So here's a Super Friends premise, The Lost Jungle. And I wrote for Super Friends, of course. Here's a He-Man premise, The Fortress in the Swamp. Again, look at that. Fortress in the Swamp, flying over the fabled Crystal Plateau. He-Man, Tila, Gorpo, Lizard Man, and Spy Man behold a strange sight. A humanoid adolescent embattled with a tentacled monstrosity, one of Skeletor's dreaded Black Legion. And so, yeah, Fortress in the Swamp. Pretty cool. And yeah, so that's, you know, 3-page premise, storyline. Here's another one called Kingdom of the Mirage. You can see, look at this, He-Man, it says it right there. Kingdom of the Mirage. By the way, my phone number is no longer this phone number, but I can give you my phone number if you ever want it. And again, and then there's another He-Man premise called, oh, this is a Spider-Man. Spider-Man and his amazing friends premise, The Ice Brute. Look at that, Spider-Man. So these, you know, Johan and Pee-wee, whatever the hell that was. God. And then here's another Spider-Man one, Trapped in the Realm of Rydalock. And here's a Hulk one. So there's one relating to the Hulk. Here's the Care Bears movie. We actually outlined a Care Bears movie at one point. And that's it. Here's more Masters of the Universe premises. And again, these have never been printed or put out anywhere. So this is Masters of the Universe premise. So if you're a Masters of the Universe collector or fan, this is, you know, this is just going to be, you know, so cool. This is just going to be, really, really neat. And then here's, I think this is Pole Position, The Wrong Meringue. Michael and I wrote, I think all of the episodes of Pole Position, and I made mine all satires. All the titles were satires, play on words of Alfred Hitchcock titles. So The Wrong Meringue is a play on The Wrong Man, and, you know, etc. Here's Smurfs. This is Smurfs in Slumberland. Look at that. And that's Lazy has had a rough day. It's been all of 10 minutes since his last nap. And then it goes on, his dream is anything but restful, blah, 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 blah. Very, very fun. And this is, yeah, Smurf's premise. It's several pages. Then another one called The Seashells. And then, let's see, another one here called Good Neighbor Smurf, which was made. I remember that title. Now, some of these, they have a different title by the time I got to writing the script. But again, look at this. This was typed on a typewriter, so that actually to change the paragraph, I actually had to cut a piece of paper out and put it over there, put it back in the typewriter, and retype it. So pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. Those were the days. Here's a He-Man episode called Ordeal in the Darklands. This also got made. I remember this. And by the way, when I was working on Smurfs, they hadn't made any of them yet. And Peo and Delaporte were the two guys who created the Smurfs. They were called Les Schtroumpfs in Belgium, where these guys were from. And so they flew them out to meet with us, all of the prospective Smurf writers, and to answer questions. And so and then we started writing. So pretty amazing. They were just comic strips. They made a couple of features in Europe, but no one had ever heard of the Smurfs at that point. They hadn't been introduced to America yet. This is another He-Man premise called The Reign of the Demon God. And then I changed that title to Reign of the Monster God. And then they said, we can't use the word God in a title, BS&P, Broadcast Standards and Practices. So I changed it to Reign of the Monster, which is the title it was made as. He-Man, Teela, Man-at-Arms, Gorpo, and Bug-Off are visiting Stratos in Delora and Avion when suddenly the kingdom of the Birdmen is put under siege by the E-Courts, vile Morlock-like creatures that ride in huge destructive walking machines. Wow, I'd watch that. And so if this is bringing back your childhood, definitely, you'll $100 to get the downloadable PDF, $200 to get a physical copy of this, that you can basically enjoy to your heart's content and show your friends and all of that. So this is Gorpo the Gargantua, and pretty cool. This is a Master of the Universe premise. And also, if you buy the physical copies, we'll include a color copy of this, and I'll sign it as well. So that's, I think I said it was $250, something like that. So here's Prince Gargamel, another Smurfs premise about Gargamel. The wonderful Paul Winchell did those voices. I'd grown up with him. He was a TV ventriloquist, and so to have him voice something I was writing was quite a thrill. Here's another Smurf premise that clearly we spilled some kind of liquid on, and this is called Hail to the Smurf. And here's more Smurf ideas with my handwritten notes on them, and and again, I'd be working up, these ideas. So here's a whole bunch of them: 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Because I would initially generate a whole bunch of ideas: 12, 13 ideas. And so you can see the evolution from initial idea to develop premise. Then you can watch the episodes and see how they came out. Here's Hefty and the Smurfonauts, a 22-minute Smurf premise. And this is by Michael, Reeves, and me. So there we are. And when we collaborated, and this is a play on the Jason and the Argonauts. Now this is the outline of an episode I wrote called The Magnifying Mixture. And this has Chuck Manville's handwritten notes on it. So he's writing these notes to someone named Gerard. So clearly that was probably the director or some other producer. But this is him doing hand corrections and hand changes on it. And then they would ship it back to me, and I'd write the script. So for instance, if you look at it out, it says, "Check this out," with a big exclamation point. And again, this is never published, never anywhere. If you don't get this on the Kickstarter campaign, you only got 6 days. You don't get it. It doesn't. You don't. There's no way to get this otherwise. It's unique. So here's the Smurf Odyssey. I mean, look at how many dozens, if not hundreds, of storylines there are on here. Renaissance Smurf. I mean, look at this. Seeing Smurfette approaching a puddle, Clumsy reaches up and throws a large leaf over it for her to walk on. Unfortunately, the puddle is deep and Smurfette goes through the leaf, out of sight, and comes up drenched and sputtering. Smurf furious, she says, "Oh, Clumsy, you're so clumsy," and storms off. And it goes from there. Fun. And so then, yeah, so this is a, this is, I think, 4 or 5 pages. So yes, this is like a 5-page premise, but that's actually more like an outline at this stage. And so you're really seeing something evolve. Here's something called Pixelated Smurfs, which has pixies in it. Here's the Magic Shells, another Smurf premise. And here's the Hunter and the Hulk. I wrote for, they had an animated Hulk show, and I wrote for the animated Hulk, and here it is. In the Caribbean, Bruce Banner, Betty Ross, and Major Ned Talbot are aboard a helicopter bound for an aircraft carrier on which General Thunderbolt Ross is preparing to test the experimental Proton Obliterator, a device for protecting ships from icebergs, reefs, and the like by destroying a barren island. But suddenly 2 huge birdmen swoop down and force the copter to make an emergency landing on the island, etc. And again, there were no Marvel movies at that time. There was no, these were not the blockbusters. I'd grown up with these comic books, and the idea of making stories that would be animated and on the networks. I mean, millions of people were watching all of these shows, all of them, and all of them were generating toys. And it was just, for me, it was really fun to be writing all these characters I'd grown up with. Here's Super Friends. This is the Island of the Dinosaurs. This is the premise, and this ultimately was made into an episode, so I wrote the script as well. So Apache Chief, Wonder Woman, and Batman are flying in the Wonder Plane to Paradise Island for a little R&R when suddenly the plane is attacked by a giant pterodactyl. The Super Friends are pitched from the plane, which crashes into the sea. Apache Chief manages to grow in size, planting his gigantic feet firmly on the shore of an island and catching his 2 friends as they fall. And it goes from there. Here's Spider-Man and his amazing friends. I didn't know I'd written for Spider-Man, but I did, I guess. So Peter, Angelica, and Bobby are in the audience at an ESU symposium as Dr. Elias Whitley of the Nordoc Corporation unveils the company's latest breakthrough, an enormous artificial star sapphire. And then, of course, things happen. Pawns of the Metal Master. And here's another one I wrote for Spider-Man and his amazing friends called Mysterio's Revenge. I mean, can you imagine getting a copy of all these things with my signature on it and a signed copy of my He-Man cell? I mean, holy cow. I mean, when I was a kid, or if, I mean, I love all of these things. Every bit of my career has been blessed. I mean, to work for all these wonderful animated shows and then to write for Star Trek The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine and Babylon 5 and Sliders and now Space Command, to work with George Takei and Gates McFadden and Nana Visitor and on, Mike Harney and Christina Moses. I mean, how fun. And these shows, Smurfs and He-Man and so forth, they were being done by the great voice talent that was available then. And many of them had played characters that I grew up with, like Huckleberry Hound and Quick Draw McGraw and, Yogi Berra. Those guys were still around, and they were doing voices for all of these things. So it was just an amazing experience. Here's another Spider-Man premise, Spider-Man Battle of the Star Warriors. So that's super cool. And again, I haven't seen these things probably in 25 years or more. Here's a Smurfs premise called Even Jokey Gets the Blues. Very funny. Here's Space Stars Finale. That was the show that I initially wrote for. This is dated 1980, and it had Uglor, and it had Space Ghost was the main character. Here's the Cosmic Mousetrap. That got made, absolutely. Space Ghost finds a lifeless barren planet. Now, Uglor, there's a very funny story about Uglor. Uglor was the villain in Space Stars. Space Ghost was the hero. So we'd be writing very, very fast. And then we'd ship the scripts off, the physical copy of the script. There was no email at that time. There was no internet at that time. So I remember that Michael Reeves, and we would call every shot. The scripts were 50 pages long, 55 pages, and you would have every single shot. You'd say 2-shot, Brainy and Papa Smurf. Then the next one would be 3-shot, all inclusive, as Smurfette joins them, whatever. So Michael meant to type Uglor long shot, and accidentally he had typed Uglor dong shot, and he hadn't caught it, and he sent it to the network. The network had a note on that one, and so so here this says Notes on the Ice Brute, and that's Spider-Man. And here's the Smurfic Games, another Smurfs premise. And so you can see I was turning it. This is Michael and me. Here's another one called The Smurfs and the Egg. That was Michael and me as well. And here's a Hulk premise, Return of the Ancient One. And, I mean, just great. I mean, if you're a fan of any of these characters, getting these premises, these are storylines. I mean, you know, I grew up with the original Star Trek, and of course I wrote the Twilight Zone Companion. And when I would find storylines written for Star Trek or storylines written for Twilight Zone that had never been made or that had changed in the evolution of the script, like by Ted Sturgeon or Ray Bradbury. I found two Ray Bradbury scripts in Rod Serling's attic, and to read those scripts or premises or outlines and just see what might have been. It was like finding a treasure. And so these are like treasures to me. These are, I mean, I just cannot, I'm so thrilled to be able to share this with you. And I really hope you, I mean, maybe you and your friends can, you know, put together some money to like, you know, if like, let's say your one friend is a Smurf fan and another friend is a He-Man fan, or another friend is a Marvel fan, maybe for $250 you put together your change and each put in like $75 or whatever, and you get, you know, all of these things and divvy them up, the physical copies. But just, my gosh, wow, wonderful. Here's something called the Green Menace, another Hulk premise, and you know, I mean, just Kidnapped to the Stars. This is Bruce Banner, Betty Ross, Rick Jones, and Rita Rio are enjoying a sunny day at the base when suddenly an enormous shadow covers them. A spaceship the size of a city. Wow. Very cool. Here's another premise of the Green Menace, you know, which is probably a different draft as I got notes. And it includes a device called the Transpositor. Very fun. You know, just amazing stuff. You know, just you start to see how these all of... Here's one called Turncoat Smurf, and this has the notes from the story editor. Explain the title. It's written by Michael Reeves and me, 1982. Chuck Menville was the story editor on this one, and it's got his notes. So it says, like for instance, trance is good. How about plain old need to rest and rejuvenate? Satire on meditation. Papa needs no training. He is it. So really fun. So, and then here's another Smurf premise, Renaissance Smurf. Wow, very fun with Clumsy and Smurfette. And you know, it's looks like to be a 4-page premise. I mean, you can see how diligent I was. I mean, coming up with so many details, so many interesting you know, twists and turns of how to use these characters. I was putting my heart and soul into this. I always bring my A game, and this is really representative of that. Here's a Smurfs in Slumberland, a 22-minute Smurf premise. Wowee. And here's another version. This is the premise of Turncoat Smurf. So Len was Chuck Menville was writing notes on a more elaborate version of this. And here's the Lava Man. This is an episode of Super Friends that I wrote, and it says Superstars up here, but it's actually Super Friends, and it has Superman, Green Lantern, and Black Vulcan. Wow, very cool. And here's another Smurfs premise. You can see that these are all different. There's dozens and dozens of them. Such Smurf as Dreams Are Made Of. That's by Michael and me. Really very fun. And again, I haven't read these. I couldn't tell you what the plot of this is. Here's another Smurfs premise, Sloppy's Spring Cleaning by Michael and me. And here's another Space Stars finale premise, and it says on the bottom, Hanna-Barbera. Look at that. That Hanna-Barbera they've been eaten up by some corporation, but they were their own company back then, and it was ink and paint. When we were doing animation, now it's all computer. Back then, someone would draw it in pencil on a piece of paper, each image, and then they would trace it onto a clear piece of cellophane like this, and then it was called ink and paint because they would trace it in ink, and then they would paint the background, the back side of it, and that was called ink and paint, and that was how they animated 2 frames per, you know, it's like 12 illustrations per second. So pretty amazing. Space Stars finale with Space Ghost, and this is called the Time Gun, and you can see, and this is from 1980. So amazing. Here's Spider-Man and his amazing friends trapped in the realm of Rydalock. And let's see what else we have here. Pawns of the Metal Master, Mysterio's Revenge, and again, these Battle of the Star Warriors. These are probably earlier drafts or different drafts. Yeah, and like the one about Sloppy. Here's a more elaborate premise called Sloppy Cleans Up His Act, and it's, you know, so this is an elaborate, you know, I would get notes, and then we would you know, change them to address the notes. Wanted, the Hulk. This is the animated Hulk show by Marvel, and Marvel was just starting out as a production company at that point. They had been doing comics since I was a kid, of course. In fact, I think I had Hulk #1 at that point. Here's Wanted, the Hulk. This is, you know, Banner and Betty are working on a top secret matter transmitter project. Of course they are. And this is another one called the Smurf Siren, Oh, that's Johan and Pee-wee. So I guess Johan and Pee-wee were characters in the Smurf universe. So yeah, and which probably you Smurf fans know. Now this is pretty cool. One-page resume. This is my resume back then when I was writing for animation. So it lists my short stories and articles, my teleplays, which include The Cosmic Mousetrap for Space Stars, Lord of Time for Black Star, Overlord's Big Spell for Black Star, Magnifying Mixture for Smurfs, Lava Men for Super Friends, and teleplays in collaboration with Michael Reeves, The Olympians for Space Stars, Magnus for Space Stars, The Air Whales of Ankar for Black Star, Zombie Master for Black Star, It Came From Outer Smurf for Smurfs, Turncoat Smurf for Smurfs, Such Dreams as Smurfs Are Made Of for Smurfs, Ring of Castellac for Smurfs. Wow. And then articles I did, and the Twilight Zone Companion. Look at that. That's my resume from 1982. Amazing. And here's something, the Banana Boat. This is, I think there was a show called Hanna-Banana, and this is a premise for that. And this is the Banana Boat. Chuck and Len were story editors on that show. Here's another Smurf episode, Handy's Dilemma. And it just keeps going. Here's another Smurfs premise called The Blue Team, which Michael and I wrote. And this is 1983. I mean, I've got walls and walls of volumes of these scripts, but this is where it all started. You had an idea, you typed it up, and that's how you would sell scripts in animation to Hanna-Barbera, to Filmation, to everybody. And by the way, these outlines, these premises, they were written for Hanna-Barbera and Marvel and DiC and on, all the major companies at the time. So the great Smurfaroo. It is a Smurfy day, and Vanity is lounging in the woods, sunning himself when Clumsy and Hefty happen by. Very fun, very fun. And so this is a four-page premise, Hanna-Barbera Productions Incorporated. Here's Evil Wraiths of Eternia. That's another one I wrote. Masters of the Universe premise, and this has my hand. Oh, this I think, yeah, this is my handwriting. So these are my hand annotations. So this is an early draft that I then corrected to change, to put Orko into it. Probably they said, put Orko into it, make an Orko story. And so I did that. I changed it from Adam to Orko. And it has Man-at-Arms and on. So this is an Orko story. And, and I was working on this show with Paul Dini. He was in-house on He-Man. And Larry DiTilio, who I'd later work with also on Babylon 5, as well as Joe Straczynski, of course. And so this is my copy with my hand. Spook Smurfs. Here's another one. Spook Smurfs, 1983. Michael and I wrote this one. The Smurfs are sitting around a fire on a spooky fall night. The forest about them is full of strange sounds. Hefty is telling a ghost story. Wow. Here's another version of Pixelated Smurfs. Here's a Smurf Day surprise. My gosh, I didn't know I'd generated all these stories. Papa's Smurf Day is rapidly approaching. Here's one called Cafe Smurf with Brainy in it. And this is my hand. These are the original typescripts. I've put a blank piece of paper in a typewriter, an IBM Selectric, and typed this myself. So very Farmer's Mascot, another Smurf one with a character called Farmer Smurf. And here's Spooked Smurfs, has my name on it. Someone wrote my name on it. So this was my copy. Spook Smurfs. Here's another one. Let's see. Here's a Super Friends. Let's see. Here's a Super Friends premise called the Vulnerability Machine. And that's very cool with Superman and Green Lantern and Black Vulcan. Here's a Super Friends premise called the Super Brute with Hawkman and Hawkgirl and Superman and Green Lantern. Here's Brainiac's Arcade, another Super Friends premise with Superman, Batman, Samurai, and the Atom against Brainiac. And of course, I'd grown up reading the DC comics as well as Marvel comics and Gold Key, and I just loved all of these characters. Smurfs premise, Papa's Aplenty. So this is another premise that I came up with. Here's Squinting Smurf. When Brainy accidentally breaks his glasses, Papa busies himself in the lab to laboriously fashion a new pair, and it goes from there. Hijinks ensue, needless to say. And here's another Super Friends I wrote called the Dinosaur Invasion, and has a character named Professor Elliot Chang, who was a friend of mine in high school. And so Elliot and I, actually the first radio play I ever wrote was Lobotomy. It was actually the second radio play I wrote, but it was aired on KPFK. It was when I was 18 years old, and Elliot was one of my partners in making Lobotomy, which was a satire a la Firesign Theater on science fiction movies and TV shows and conventions. And I'll be putting that onto Mr. Sci-Fi shortly. But This has a Deinonychus. This is before Jurassic Park. It's got a Deinonychus and an intelligent dinosaur called a Dinosaur, and it is just, and Quetzalcoatlus, another really cool ancient creature. So, wow. So that's the batch. So you can see it's, my God, it just goes on forever. It's hundreds of pages, and this is, so for $100 you'll get a PDF of all of this, and for $250 you'll get the copy of the He-Man cell signed by me, and a copy of this signed by me. So and it'll probably be all bound together, so one will all go flying. But I urge you to get this. I think it's so cool. I'm thrilled that I have this, that I saved this, because this is television history. I mean, these are all shows that are still, you can go online now and you can watch these shows. They're still around and still popular, and kids love them. And I'm very proud of the work I did. And I never set out to be an animation writer, interestingly enough. I wanted to be in science fiction writing for things like Star Trek, but Michael Reeves gave me the opportunity, bless him, and that's how I got my start. And I wrote for things that here we are all these years later, 40 years later and more. And, people still love these shows, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful to all of you that I'm able to make Space Command, and Sweet Haven is coming up, and all these other projects we're going to be doing. We're laying out the entire season of Space Command. We're moving forward very effectively, and lots more to come. But again, please go on our Kickstarter campaign, because if we lose the $48,000, it really sets us back, and unless we hit $48,000 in 6 days, it all vanishes. And so I don't want that to happen. I want to be able to continue making this wonderful television for you guys, and that's why I do it. And I love all of you for being part of this. I love you for making it possible, and hell, I love you just for being there. And but again, thanks so much for being part of this, and thanks so much for your help. If you can put in some money, it'll make all the difference. And that's it for now. And if you want to buy Space Command shares, the drill. 323-363-1259 gets you to me, markzicree@gmail.com. And but we'll talk again really soon. So just go to the Kickstarter campaign; it's right there, and download this, and click through and order what you want, and you'll get it toot sweet. And more Space Command will get made because of your help. So that's it, guys. It's been really fun going through this. I mean, it brings back so many memories. It was super fun working on all this stuff, and we were young and we were ambitious, and our dreams came true. And so thanks to you, my dreams are still coming true. And we'll talk again real soon. Bye, guys.